Marcus Blake had just turned 17, 2 weeks before that train ride. He was tall for his age, with a lanky frame he hadn't quite grown into, and a crooked grin that made it easy for people to mistake him for charming rather than reckless. He liked it that way, being underestimated. Gave him room to move. In school, Marcus wasn't the smartest, but he was sharp, quick on his feet, a master of deflection. He knew how to spin a joke fast enough to distract from a missed homework or a late arrival. Teachers rolled their eyes, his friends egged him on, and Marcus played his part like a pro. It was a game to him, staying one step ahead of being vulnerable. His home life was quieter. His mom, Ayanna, worked double shifts at the hospital. She left before he woke up and usually came back after he'd already passed out on the couch. They barely crossed paths, but there was love between them, unspoken, heavy, always a little tired. She tried. She really did. But trying didn't stretch a paycheck or slow down time. His dad had dipped when Marcus was 9, said he'd be back with a new plan. Never came back at all. Marcus had stopped expecting anything from people after that. So when he found his circle, the crew he rode with most afternoons, it felt like solid ground. Malik, Dre, Tone, and Jules. They weren't a gang. Not really. Just 5 bored teenagers trying to make New York feel like theirs. Subway rides became their stage. Their phones, their megaphones. Likes were currency. Dunks on strangers. A shortcut to viral status. Marcus didn't hate anyone. He didn't even think he was being mean most of the time. It was just content. Reactions. Shock value. He told himself people would forget. He wasn't hurting anyone. Right. Just playing the game. But that day on the subway, things felt off. They'd just left a corner store in Brooklyn, each with a soda and a bag of chips, talking trash and laughing about a TikTok. Marcus spotted the man curled by the train doors the moment they stepped in, wrapped in plastic bags and duct tape, head down, shoes stuffed with newspaper, the kind of sight people in the city learned to ignore. But Marcus didn't ignore him. He zeroed in. "Yo, check out this dude," he said. "Phone already out." Malik laughed. Dre leaned in. Jules shook his head and said, "Don't start, bro." But Marcus was already filming. He didn't even know why. Exactly. There was no punchline yet. No real plan. Just instinct. He crouched slightly, getting the angle, already crafting the caption in his head. Something about subway wildlife or winter fashion gone wrong. He didn't expect the man to react. Most didn't. They just shrank into themselves and waited for it to be over. He definitely didn't expect the other voice. That's supposed to be funny. It cut the moment in half. Marcus looked up, confused. The voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. Like someone had just shut a door in the middle of a party. His friends turned. Everyone in the car went quiet. The man who spoke stood at the far end of the train. He wasn't yelling, wasn't even moving fast. But there was a focus to him that made Marcus put his phone down without thinking. In that frozen second, Marcus felt heat rise in his face. Not because he thought he was wrong, he didn't know what he thought yet, but because someone had actually called him out. The man walked over slowly. He wasn't huge, but he carried himself like someone who'd been through more than Marcus could imagine. "It's not a joke if he's the only one not laughing," the man said. The words landed like a slap. Marcus wanted to fire back, wanted to say something slick, crack a grin, maybe toss out a chill. It's not that deep. But nothing came out. He watched as the man unzipped his thick navy coat and knelt down next to the homeless man without ceremony. No big speech, no drama. Just the coat, offered with a quiet kind of respect. "Here, it's clean. It's warm. Take it." The man on the floor didn't say a word, just nodded once, like he was used to silence. Like this act of kindness wasn't ordinary, but it also wasn't new. When the man stood up and looked at Marcus, there was no anger in his eyes, just disappointment. That stung worse. That's how you make someone feel seen. Then he turned and walked through the train doors into the next car, leaving a silence that roared in Marcus's ears. Marcus rode the rest of the way home without a word. The video sat in his camera roll, unposted. He looked at it once, saw his own face in the reflection of the phone, saw the coat, the man, the shame. He didn't delete it. Not yet. But something in him felt different. Like someone had taken a mirror and smashed it in front of him. And now all he could see were the pieces. That night, he sat on his bed, scrolling. His feed was filled with noise pranks, stunts, fake apologies. For the first time, it all looked hollow. He remembered something his mom used to say when he was little, how you treat people when no one's watching, that's who you really are. He hadn't thought about that in years, but now it rang in his head like a bell. The next morning, Marcus didn't go out with his friends and he didn't say why. He just pulled out an old duffel bag and started going through his closet, looking for coats, not because he had a plan, not because it would look good online, just because maybe it was time to stop performing and start showing up. Leroy Johnson hadn't meant to wake up on that train. But when you're homeless, sleep finds you where it can, on benches, on grates, on moving steel boxes rumbling beneath a city that never made room for you. Sometimes the subway was warm enough. Usually, it wasn't. But it was better than the street, better than the cold biting your fingers until they cracked. That day, the train had been half empty. Leroy found his corner and curled up, tucking his knees to his chest, the way he'd learned to when the pain in his hip flared up. His coat had been stolen 2 nights earlier, left it by his side while he used the bathroom at the shelter. When he came back, it was gone, along with his gloves, along with the small bit of trust he still had left in other people. So he sat on the train, wrapped in plastic bags and a thermal blanket someone had handed him weeks ago. He didn't beg, didn't speak. He'd learned by now that silence made him invisible, and being invisible was safer than being noticed. Until the kid with the phone pointed at him, Leroy didn't flinch, but inside, he felt something drop. The humiliation was sharp, sudden. He didn't cry anymore, had learned to hold that back. But it hit him in the gut just the same. The camera, the laughter, the way they circled him like he was a zoo animal. He kept his eyes down, didn't give them the satisfaction. He thought, let it pass. It always passes. But then something different happened. A man spoke up. A stranger. His voice cut through the jeers like a blade. That's supposed to be funny. Leroy looked up, just a little, through the edges of his lashes. He didn't know this man, didn't expect anyone to care. But there he was, tall, calm, eyes locked on the kid holding the phone. Leroy didn't understand why this man stepped in. Not at first. He'd stopped believing in help, believing in kindness. Even the soup lines came with stares, pity, and judgment. People fed him and still looked at him like trash. But this man didn't speak to him like trash. Didn't even ask his name. Just looked him in the eyes, really looked and said, "Here, it's clean. It's warm. Take it." Then he took off his own coat and handed it over. Leroy hesitated. It wasn't the first time someone had said they'd help. But this wasn't a promise. This was real. The coat was heavy, smelled faintly of detergent and cigarette smoke. It was the first thing warm to touch his skin in days. He wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in his throat. All he could do was nod. The man didn't wait for applause, didn't wait for approval, just turned and left. Leroy rode 2 more stops before he stood up. The coat made him feel bigger, somehow, less like a ghost. He stepped off the train and sat on a bench near the platform exit. People passed by. No one stared. No one pointed. They just moved. It was quiet. And for once, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. He didn't know the man's name. Didn't think he'd ever see him again. But he remembered something from years ago, before the streets, before the bottle, before the collapse. A line from his old pastor. Grace is given, not earned. He'd never believed it, until now. Years ago, Leroy had been someone else. He'd worked at PS 122 as a janitor. Not glamorous, but stable. The kids liked him, called him Mr. J. He cleaned up after them, kept the boilers running, painted over graffiti. He had a rhythm, a routine, a small apartment in Bed-Stuy, a wife, a son. Then the layoffs came, budget cuts. He thought he'd find something new. Didn't. The money dried up. The marriage cracked. His son stayed with his mother. Leroy drifted. He started sleeping in his car. Then the car got towed. Shelters followed. Then the streets. The drinking began slowly. Then it didn't stop. The worst part wasn't the cold or the hunger. It was how fast people stopped seeing him. How he could sit on the same corner for hours, days, and not one person would make eye contact. You become part of the background. You become clutter. So when the stranger on the subway looked at him, really looked at him, it was like being yanked back into the world. Not saved, but seen. That night, Leroy went to the shelter early. They didn't turn him away this time. The coat helped. People treated you different when you looked like you had something to lose. In the bathroom mirror, he barely recognized himself. The coat made him look normal, not new, not clean, but not invisible. He sat on the edge of the cot and closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he let himself think about tomorrow. Not just surviving it, showing up for it. A few days later, Leroy went back to that train line. Not because he expected anything, just to ride, to remember, to feel like part of the city again. That's when he saw the kid, the same one who had filmed him. Same eyes, same face. But something was different. The kid walked over, hesitant. "Hey," he said, "you remember me?" Leroy wanted to say no, wanted to let the moment pass, but something in the kid's voice stopped him. "You the kid with the phone?" "Yeah," the kid said. "I was an asshole." Leroy studied him. There was no arrogance, no phone out, just eyes full of something rare accountability. "You came back," Leroy said. "Most don't." The kid didn't reply, just nodded, then offered a plastic bag full of clothes. "Don't know if this helps," he said, "but it's clean. It's warm." Leroy smiled. "Grace," he muttered. "Given, not earned." Thomas Vega didn't plan on getting involved that day. He rarely did. Not because he didn't care, he cared too much. That was the problem. He'd learned the hard way that stepping in sometimes made things worse. When he first came home from Afghanistan, he thought he could save people. Thought he could be the guy who pulled others up before they hit bottom. Then his sister OD'd. Then his best friend from the course shot himself in a motel outside Syracuse. Then his girlfriend left because he stopped talking, stopped trying, stopped sleeping. By the time Thomas found his own rock bottom sleeping in Bryant Park under a tarp with a half-finished bottle of whiskey, he understood what helplessness really looked like. So now he stayed in his lane. He went to work, kept his head down, paid his bills, didn't lecture, didn't interfere, didn't make noise, until that moment on the train. He'd just finished a 10-hour shift at a job site in Red Hook, pouring concrete and patching up a busted retaining wall. His hands were raw, his shoulders ached. All he wanted was to sit down, close his eyes, and forget the world for a few stops. But then he heard the laughter. The high-pitched, punch-down kind. The kind he'd heard in schoolyards when he was a poor Puerto Rican kid with hand-me-down shoes. The kind that used to make him walk the long way home to avoid being noticed. He opened his eyes and saw the boy crouching with a phone, pointing it at the man on the floor. He didn't hesitate. "That's supposed to be funny," he said, low and level, voice like gravel under steel. The kid froze, looked up. Thomas stood and walked slowly across the train. Each step burned from the day's labor, but the fire inside him burned hotter. "It's not a joke if he's the only one not laughing," he said. He looked down at the homeless man, skin tight over bones, face blank from years of being reduced to nothing. A human being, discarded like trash. Thomas didn't think. He didn't ask. He just unzipped his coat. It was a heavy one, the kind he'd bought last winter on sale at Burlington. Still clean, still warm, probably the nicest thing he owned. But it wasn't more valuable than the moment. He crouched, held it out. "Sir," he said gently, like he used to speak to his drill sergeant. "Here. It's clean. It's warm. Take it." The man didn't speak, just nodded. Thomas helped him put it on. He stood up, faced the kid again. That's how you make someone feel seen. Then he turned and walked to the next car, heart pounding, hands cold now, but lighter. Thomas didn't tell anyone about what happened, not his coworkers, not his roommate. He didn't post it online. He didn't write about it. He figured no one needed to know. That night, he got home, took a hot shower, and lay down on the couch wrapped in an old blanket. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. But there was a peace in his chest that night, a small one, a spark. Thomas hadn't always been like this. He grew up in a third-floor walk-up in the Bronx with 5 siblings, 1 mother, and barely enough food in the fridge. His mother, Rosita, worked miracles cleaning houses, running errands, hustling every hour of daylight to keep the lights on. He joined the Marines at 18, not for glory, for money, for structure, for a way out. He saw things in Kandahar that he still couldn't say out loud. Lost a piece of himself there. Maybe more than one. Came home at 26 with medals he couldn't eat and nightmares he couldn't outrun. The VA let him sit on waiting lists. His friends gave him platitudes. New York gave him nothing but noise and rent hikes. He drank. He drifted. Then came the night he woke up in Bryant Park with frostbite on 2 toes and a cop nudging him with a baton. "Move or I take you in," the cop had said. That was the moment. The switch. The crack in the ice. Thomas checked into a rehab program the next day. Spent 6 months fighting his own demons. Got clean. Got work. Stayed sober. Started building things again brick by brick. Not just buildings. His life. When he saw the man on the floor, he saw himself. Not just in the coatless figure, but in the kid with the phone. The arrogance. The blind ignorance. The hunger for approval. Thomas had been both. Had mocked the weak to feel strong. Had fallen low enough to beg with his eyes because his voice had vanished. That's why he stepped in. Not to be a hero. To balance the scale. A few weeks later, he was riding the train again. Clean shirt, fresh boots. The cold still bit. But this time, he had another coat cheaper. Flimsier. But enough. He looked up and saw the same kid. Alone this time. Different posture. No swagger. Just a duffel bag at his feet. Full of what looked like winter clothes. Thomas didn't speak at first, just watched. The kid got off 2 stops later, hauling the bag toward a shelter entrance. Thomas smiled to himself. Maybe the world hadn't changed, but that kid had. Sometimes that was enough. Marcus didn't talk much on the ride home. Dre and Malik joked half-heartedly for a while, trying to recapture the spark from earlier, but it fizzled. Even they felt the shift. By the time they hit Queens Plaza, nobody was laughing anymore. The coat, the voice, that line, that's how you make someone feel seen. It echoed, gnawed. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket and tapped the video. He hadn't posted it. Couldn't bring himself to. The thumbnail stared back at him, the man on the floor, caught mid-shiver, plastic bags wrapped around his ankles. He hit play. He watched himself in the reflection of the screen, grinning, loud, full of bravado. Then the stranger entered frame, and everything changed. He turned the screen off. When he got home, his mom was asleep on the couch, scrubs still on, feet swollen and propped up on a milk crate. Marcus stepped around her quietly, dropped his bag, and went to his room. He lay on his bed in the dark for a long time. The glow of the streetlight bled through the blinds, slicing the room into stripes. He couldn't shake it, not just the embarrassment, something deeper. That feeling of being checked, not punished, not scolded seen, and not in the way he was used to attention. Jokes, clout. This was different. This was someone looking through the mask. The next morning, he skipped the group chat, let texts pile up. Didn't respond to Malik's "you, good," or Dre's "yo, did you delete the vid?" Instead, he opened his closet. He hadn't looked at it this way in a long time. Just clothes. Right. But now he saw things differently. Hoodies he never wore. Jackets he'd outgrown. A winter coat he'd only used twice, still in perfect condition. He grabbed a duffel bag and started folding. T-shirts, thermals, socks, a beanie, gloves, scarves. He took his time. He thought about that man on the floor. Thought about the way he hadn't even flinched when the camera came out like he expected it. Like he knew people would treat him like a joke. The coat had changed that. Not just because it was warm, but because it was given with dignity. Marcus had never given anyone anything without strings. Not really. That afternoon, he asked his mom if there were places to donate clothes. She blinked, confused. "You trying to make room for new ones?" He shook his head. "No, just trying to do something good." She studied him for a beat, as if trying to figure out the angle. But there wasn't one. "Okay," she said finally. "There's a shelter by Jamaica Station. I'll write down the address." The building was tucked between a laundromat and a discount dental office. No sign. Just a red door and a buzzer. Marcus stood there with the duffel bag, unsure for a moment if he should knock. He wasn't even sure what to say. A volunteer opened the door, middle-aged, wiry, warm eyes. "Need a place to sleep?" he asked gently. Marcus shook his head. "I brought clothes." The man smiled. "We'll take 'em. Come on in." He stepped into the shelter, the warmth rushing over him like a wave. The air smelled like detergent and soup. Volunteers moved around briskly, sorting boxes, folding sheets, checking rosters. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone moved with intention. He handed over the bag. "No name needed," Marcus asked. The man shook his head. "Just the clothes. But thank you." Marcus nodded. Started to leave, then stopped. "Hey," he said. "What's the best way to help? I mean, besides this?" The volunteer looked at him for a moment. Listening. Showing up. Not forgetting we're people. It hit like a second slap. A softer one. But it stuck. The next time Marcus saw his friends, they were posted up at their usual corner store, laughing about someone getting roasted in class. Malik asked, "Yo, you see that new TikTok Jules finally posted the video of that weirdo doing the worm in the cafeteria?" Marcus didn't laugh, just gave a half smile and sipped his soda. Dre looked at him sideways. "You good, man?" "I'm chill," Marcus said. He didn't feel the need to explain himself. Let them think what they wanted. It wasn't about them. But when Jules showed up and pulled out his phone, grinning, Marcus leaned in. "If it's about clowning somebody who can't hit back," he said, "miss me with it." The group went quiet. Jules raised an eyebrow. "You for real right now?" Marcus didn't blink. Deadass. Nobody clapped. Nobody gave a speech. But Dre looked down. Malik scratched his chin, and Jules quietly slid the phone back into his pocket. The moment passed, but something had shifted. At home. Marcus kept thinking about the man in the coat. He didn't know his name. Didn't even know if he was from the city. But he remembered every detail, his steady voice, the way he moved, the calm in his face. "That's how you make someone feel seen." He repeated it to himself at night. Not like a mantra, not like a lesson, but like a promise. He hadn't earned that man's respect, but he could become someone worthy of it. One Sunday morning, he returned to the shelter. No duffel bag this time, just himself. He asked if he could help. They put him on sorting duty gloves, socks, men's and women's clothing, hygiene kits. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't hard, but it was real. He didn't post about it, didn't film anything, didn't tell his friends. He just worked, and when he saw a man come in wearing a thick navy coat that looked eerily familiar, he felt something click. Maybe it was the same man, maybe not. But either way, the coat had traveled, the kindness had spread, and Marcus had changed. Not all at once, not forever. He still slipped, still joked too hard sometimes, still got caught up in dumb drama. But there was a line he wouldn't cross now, a camera he wouldn't lift, a silence he'd learned to hold. And sometimes, when he caught his reflection on the train, he didn't just see himself. He saw the boy he'd been and the man he was trying to become. Marcus stood outside the shelter for 10 full minutes before walking in again. No duffel this time, no clothes to donate. Just him. It was Saturday, and the city was coated in that gray, frozen film that shows up midwinter and overstays its welcome. Marcus had gloves this time, a coat, his hood up. He looked like every other kid trying to stay warm, invisible in a sea of motion. But inside, he felt exposed. He stepped through the red door and was greeted by the same volunteer from before, a wiry guy with kind eyes and a buzz cut. Marcus had learned his name last time, Reggie. "Back already?" Reggie asked, eyebrows raised. "I was wondering if you needed help." "Like volunteering," Marcus said, trying not to sound like he was auditioning. Reggie stared at him for a moment. "You ever do this before?" Marcus shook his head. "You okay with sorting through stuff that might smell? We get a lot of donations. Not all of them fresh." "Yeah," Marcus said. "I can handle that." Reggie pointed toward the back room. "Coat rack's yours." That first hour was mostly quiet. Marcus unpacked plastic bags of old clothes, sorted them into bins, clean versus not clean, wearable versus trash. Some stuff smelled like mildew. Other items still had tags. One pair of jeans had a wad of cash in the pocket, 2 crumpled 20s. Marcus handed it to Reggie, who grinned and tossed it in a donation jar without blinking. It felt good. Doing something that didn't involve a screen. No likes, no audience. Just motion, task, rhythm. About 2 hours in, a young woman came in with a little girl bundled in a puffy coat 2 sizes too big. Her daughter clung to her leg, wide-eyed. Reggie stepped out to greet them. Marcus stayed back, but he listened. "We just need coats," the woman said quietly. "For her and maybe if there's a blanket." Reggie walked them over to the bins. The girl didn't say a word, just looked around like the room was made of glass and might crack if she blinked. Marcus couldn't help it. He stepped forward. He reached into the children's bin and pulled out a pink puffer coat with a working zipper and only one small stain on the sleeve. "Try this," he said, crouching down. The girl looked at her mom, who gave a small nod. Marcus helped zip it up. It fit. The girl smiled. "Not wide, not loud, but real." Marcus grinned back, then stood up and returned to his sorting. No one said anything. No big moment, but it stuck with him all day. Later that week, Marcus went back. And again the week after that. It became a routine. Every Saturday, he'd show up in jeans and sneakers. And for a few hours, he'd do whatever was needed: unpack, sort, fold, clean. No spotlight, no drama. Reggie taught him how to listen. Not just with his ears, but with his face, his posture, how to hear what people needed without making them say it. The staff called him the quiet one. A few of the older volunteers gave him gentle ribbing about being too cool to talk, but they liked him. He wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. He was just doing. Back at school, things shifted, slowly. He still hung with Dre and Malik sometimes, but it wasn't like before. The jokes didn't hit the same. The noise felt hollow. He started sitting near the quiet kids in class, asked questions, paid attention. His teachers noticed. Miss Kravitz, his English teacher, even pulled him aside one day. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I'm just trying to be better." She smiled, surprised. "Well, you are?" It was strange how something so small could land so hard. At night, Marcus sometimes lay in bed wondering how far kindness really traveled. Had the man with the coat done this on purpose? Had he known that one gesture, just one, could pull someone back from the edge? Probably not. But he'd done it anyway, and that felt important. It wasn't just the coat, it was the choice. One evening, Marcus ran into someone unexpected outside the shelter. He'd just finished his shift and was walking out when he saw the tall silhouette across the street, broad shoulders, work boots, that same calm energy. Thomas, the man from the train. He was holding 2 to-go trays of food from the deli on the corner. He noticed Marcus and raised his chin, not surprised to see him. "You volunteering now?" Thomas asked, crossing the street. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Started a couple weeks ago." Thomas handed him one of the trays. "Chicken and rice, extra hot sauce. You look like you skipped dinner." Marcus blinked. "You remember me?" Thomas smiled. "I remember the look on your face when I handed over that coat." Marcus lowered his head. "Yeah, I deserved that." Thomas shook his head. "You didn't deserve to be shamed. You deserved to be challenged. Big difference." They sat on the steps outside the shelter and ate quietly. "Why'd you do it?" Marcus asked finally. "The coat, that day." Thomas didn't answer right away. "I've been both people on that train," he said. "The one laughing and the one on the floor. That day, I had a choice. You did too." Marcus nodded. "I made the wrong one," he said. Thomas looked at him, then nudged his arm. "You made the right one after. That's what counts." That night, Marcus walked home slower than usual. The city buzzed around him, sirens, headlights, horns. But he felt quiet inside. He wasn't fixed, wasn't finished, but he'd taken the first step. And for now, that was enough. The train screeched into the station, lights flickering above as Marcus stepped on. It was later than he usually rode, and the car was mostly empty. A couple of kids in headphones, an older woman clutching a tote, a man snoring into a newspaper. And then, near the back, he saw him. Same posture, same face, same eyes. It was the man from that day. The one who'd been wrapped in plastic bags on the floor. Only now, he wasn't lying down. He was sitting upright, near the window, And he was wearing the coat. Marcus stared. His legs didn't move at first. The subway jolted forward. His heart thumped hard in his chest. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? He walked down the aisle slowly, slid into the seat across from the man, careful not to make it weird. "Hey," Marcus said, "quiet." The man looked up, eyes slightly foggy, maybe tired, maybe wary. Then they sharpened a little. "You remember me?" Marcus asked. The man tilted his head, studying him. "You the kid with the phone?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, I was a jerk." A beat of silence. "I figured," the man said. No anger in it, just fact. Marcus looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry. For real. I didn't get it back then. But I do now." The man didn't answer right away, just stared out the window as the tunnel blurred past. Then quietly, "You came back. Most don't." Marcus looked up. "I've been volunteering at the shelter by Jamaica. I've been trying to make it right." The man finally turned his head and looked him full in the face. "I didn't expect that," he said. "Me neither," Marcus replied. "But someone gave me a second chance. Figured I should pass it on." The man's eyes dropped to the coat. He tugged at the zipper slightly, like he'd just remembered it was on him. "I don't know who that man was," Marcus said, "the one who gave you that, but he changed something in me, like flipped a switch I didn't know I had." The man nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what it felt like I mattered again, even if just for a second." They sat in silence, the kind that doesn't feel awkward. "I'm Marcus," the teen said. "Leroy," the man replied. They shook hands, firmly, like equals. Leroy hadn't planned on riding that train again, but something kept pulling him back. He'd started going to the shelter more regularly, getting hot meals, using the showers. One of the caseworkers there helped him apply for a housing program, told him to hang in a little longer, that the waiting list was moving. He hadn't had anyone believe in him for years, not since he'd lost his job, his apartment, his place in the world. But the coat had started something. It reminded him he wasn't finished. Now, sitting across from Marcus, the same kid who once mocked him like he was a joke, he felt something strange. Not anger, not even surprise. Pride that the moment hadn't been wasted. That the coat hadn't just warmed his skin, but someone else's soul. "Do you have a phone?" Marcus asked suddenly. Leroy chuckled. "Haven't in a while. Would you want one? I might be able to get you a basic one. Not flashy, just something to stay connected. You know, call the shelter, check on the housing thing." Leroy blinked. "You'd do that?" Marcus shrugged. "I know what it's like to be disconnected." He didn't say it out loud, but part of him saw Leroy as more than a man on the street. He saw a version of himself lost, unseen, one bad fall away from being stepped over. If this connection helped even a little, it was worth it. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other more. Sometimes on the train, sometimes outside the shelter. Marcus brought Leroy a prepaid phone, taught him how to use it, saved the shelter's number on it, along with Reggie's. Leroy kept showing up to the housing office, kept attending the weekly support group. The coat helped. The confidence helped more. One night, Marcus showed up with something else, a folded-up list. "What's this?" Leroy asked. "Job fair? Veterans outreach?" "I think they've got something for maintenance workers." Leroy stared at it like it was written in another language. "Been a while since I held a real job." Marcus smiled. "You never stopped working. You've just had to work harder than most people ever will." Leroy didn't argue. By March, the snow was melting. The coat was still on him, but now he wore it open, like he was getting used to the air again, getting used to being seen. Reggie called Marcus one afternoon, told him Leroy got accepted into transitional housing, a small room in a shared building, clean sheets, a lock on the door. Marcus didn't celebrate out loud. He just smiled and nodded. Leroy had done the heavy lifting. All Marcus had done was show up. The next time they met on the train, Leroy had a small bag at his feet. "What's in there?" Marcus asked. "Stuff for the next guy," Leroy said. "Couple extra gloves, a hoodie, a note. Says, 'It gets better.'" Marcus swallowed hard. "You gonna keep riding this line?" Leroy asked. Marcus smirked. "Yeah, think I will." They sat in silence as the train rumbled forward, deeper into the city. Neither of them looked at their phones. Neither of them needed to. Change wasn't a straight line. Marcus figured that out pretty quickly. There were good days. Days when he showed up to the shelter early, sorted 3 bags of donations, and left with that clear, clean feeling in his chest. Days when Leroy texted him updates from his new place. Little wins like got hot water today or figured out the coffee machine. Days when he saw a kid clowning someone and had the guts to speak up, even if it meant getting side-eyed. And then there were the other days when his old crew pulled up outside the bodega, dapping each other up, telling wild stories. And it was so easy, so tempting to fall back into that rhythm. Days when the group chat blew up with memes and insults and clips of people getting humiliated for laughs. And he hovered over the keyboard, his thumbs itching to jump in. Not to be mean, just to belong. Change was slow, painful, lonely. Sometimes it felt like doing the right thing just made you tired. One afternoon, a kid named Tyrell, skinny, sharp-tongued, the kind of guy Marcus once would have gravitated toward, showed up to the shelter to eat. He was loud from the jump, cracking on people, laughing too hard at his own jokes. He pointed at an older guy who had mismatched shoes and said, "Yo, my man out here starting a new fashion trend." A couple of other guys snickered. Marcus clenched his jaw. He didn't want to play cop. He hated the idea of being that guy, the fun killer, the over-serious do-gooder. But then he saw the man's face, the one with the shoes. He didn't flinch, just stared at the floor, lips pressed tight. Marcus walked over to Tyrell. "Yo, chill," he said, low but firm. Tyrell raised an eyebrow. "What, I'm just messing?" "Nah, you're punching down. That's not what we do here." Tyrell rolled his eyes. "Who made you king of the shelter?" "No one," Marcus said. "I'm just someone who used to be you." Tyrell squinted, maybe recognizing him, or maybe just hearing something real in Marcus's voice. He didn't say anything after that, just shrugged and wandered off toward the food line. Reggie walked by a few minutes later and patted Marcus on the back. "Harder to stand up to someone like you than someone unlike you," he said. Marcus nodded. He knew what he meant. At school, things were complicated. He wasn't getting picked on or anything. But he wasn't exactly embraced either. His old friends saw the change and didn't know what to do with it. Some pulled away. Some made passive digs. "You too good for us now, or donating sweaters instead of coming to the party." Huh. He let most of it slide, but it stung, especially when Dre posted a clip from the cafeteria, some freshman tripping over a chair and dropping his lunch tray, and captioned it, "This man down bad El Mao." Marcus DM'd him. "Yo, that's not it." Dre replied with a laughing emoji and nothing else. Marcus stared at the screen. His fingers hovered. He wanted to rant, to lecture, to explain, but he didn't. He closed the app. Instead, he texted Leroy, "You ever feel like everyone thinks you're crazy for trying?" A minute later, Leroy replied, "All the time. Do it anyway." One cold Sunday, Marcus met Thomas again. The man with the coat. He'd just finished a volunteer shift and stepped out for air when he saw Thomas across the street, sitting on a bench with a paper bag in one hand and a black coffee in the other. Marcus walked over. They sat in silence for a few minutes. "People don't really change," Marcus said eventually. "Not most of them." Thomas took a sip. "That bother you?" "Yeah," Marcus admitted. Thomas looked at him. "So change anyway. Don't do it for them. Do it because you can." Marcus exhaled slowly. "I didn't think doing the right thing would feel this heavy." "It does," Thomas said, "because it's real. If it was easy, everyone would do it." He paused, then added, "You're still doing it. That says something." Marcus looked down at his hands. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just faking it. Like I'm trying to be this better person. But maybe I'm just pretending." Thomas laughed, not mockingly, more like recognition. "If you're pretending, you're the most committed actor I've ever seen." That made Marcus smile. A few days later, Leroy called. His voice was different, brighter, stronger. "I got the job," he said. "Maintenance at a community center. It's part-time for now, but it's steady. Benefits might come later." "That's amazing," Marcus said. Leroy laughed. "And guess what? I used your trick. Sorted out an old coat I didn't need, left it at the shelter with a note." "What did it say?" "Someone saw me, now I see you." Marcus swallowed the lump in his throat. "Leroy, I'm proud of you." There was a pause. "Then I'm proud of you. Kid like you. Doing what you're doing, that's rare." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. So he said nothing. Sometimes silence was the loudest kind of truth. Change wasn't a single act. It was a decision you had to keep making even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Marcus kept showing up. To the shelter. To school. To himself. He wasn't perfect. He still slipped. Still got mad. Still wanted to laugh at the wrong things sometimes. But he caught himself more. And when he didn't, when he missed the mark, he owned it, apologized, tried again. Because real change isn't clean. It's messy, gritty, full of doubt. But it's also the only thing that makes anything worth saving. It was snowing again. Soft, steady flakes falling like static over the city. Marcus pulled his hood tighter and kept walking. The train rumbled beneath his feet, and he followed the path to the usual platform without thinking. It had become second nature now, this ritual of movement, of showing up, of noticing. The subway car was half full. A man in a business suit scrolled on his phone. 2 teenagers argued over earbuds. A couple with shopping bags leaned on each other, fast asleep. And then, near the door, he saw someone who reminded him of Leroy. Not Leroy himself, this man was younger, maybe mid-30s, thin, soaked through, sitting on the floor, back to the door, layers of clothes doing a poor job of holding in any warmth. His shoes were falling apart at the seams. His hands trembled in his lap. He wasn't asking for anything. Wasn't holding a sign. Just existing. Quietly. Like he was trying not to be in the way of a world that had long stopped caring. Marcus stood for a moment, hands in his pockets. No one else looked. No one moved. Same train, same kind of moment. But this time, he was the one with the coat. It was nothing special, just a puffer jacket from Target. Black. Thick. A little too warm for how mild the morning had started. He'd been sweating under it earlier. Now he knew why he'd worn it. He stepped forward. No camera, no audience, just him and this man. "Hey," he said softly. The man looked up, eyes guarded, expecting judgment, maybe pity. Marcus crouched down just like Thomas had that day. "I got another coat at home," he said. "This one's clean. It's warm. You need it more than I do." He didn't ask, didn't hesitate. He slipped out of the coat, held it out. The man stared at it like it was too good to be true. "It's okay," Marcus said. "Really." A pause. Then, slowly, the man reached up and took it. "No, thank you." No speech, just a nod. That tiny gesture Marcus now understood deeply. He stood, looked around. Still, no one else reacted, no eyes shifted, no applause. And that was the point. He got off at the next stop, shivered in his hoodie as the wind blew through the station. His fingers burned, but his chest was warm. Back when this all started, he would have posted the moment, would have snapped a selfie, added a hashtag. Not out of cruelty, just out of impulse. He thought doing good meant showing it. Now he knew better. Real change didn't need an audience. It just needed action. That afternoon, he met Leroy for coffee. It had become a weekly thing. Leroy always showed up 10 minutes early, dressed in a work shirt with his ID badge clipped to the collar. He looked younger these days, laughed more, had plans. "I might take a GED class," Leroy said, sipping from his paper cup. "Feels weird talking about school again, but I don't know. Feels good." "You should do it," Marcus said. "You'd crush it." They sat outside the cafe, watching snow collect on the sidewalk. A delivery guy cursed at a passing car. A little girl made snowballs out of slush. The city moved like it always had, fast, unforgiving, alive. "You still volunteering?" Leroy asked. "Yeah," Marcus nodded. "Reggie keeps giving me more shifts. Said I've got a volunteer face. Whatever that means." Leroy laughed. "Means you're not as tough as you pretend to be." "I'm still tough," Marcus said, grinning. But inside, he knew what Leroy meant, and he was okay with it. That night, Marcus scrolled through his photos. Not the ones he posted, the ones he kept to himself. There were no pictures of the man on the train that morning. No selfies with Leroy. No record of the coat being passed from one life to another. But there was a picture from months ago, the original one. The video he never posted. The one where he mocked a man on the floor. He had kept it all this time. Hidden deep in a folder marked, "Do not open." His thumb hovered over it. He tapped play. There he was smirking, filming, performing. And then there was Thomas. Calm, solid, changing the air with one line. Marcus didn't watch it all. He stopped it halfway through. This wasn't who he was anymore. He deleted it. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just a quiet click, a clean break. At school the next week, someone tried to bait him. A kid in gym class tripped and fell hard during dodgeball. Laughter erupted. Phones whipped out. "Yo, Marcus, you get that someone yelled..." He looked up. "No," Marcus said. And I'm not going to. A couple kids snorted. One rolled his eyes, but someone else, the new kid. Ethan nodded at him. Later, Ethan caught up to him by the lockers. Thanks, he said. For what? For not laughing. Marcus just shrugged. But inside, he felt it again, that quiet certainty. The ripple, months later, the coat would be passed again. Not by Marcus, not by Thomas, not even by Leroy. Someone new. Someone who'd been changed by a gesture that had no camera, no caption, no witness. Because that's how real kindness works. It spreads quietly, and it sticks. This story reminds us that the smallest acts of compassion, when done without cameras, without ego, and without expecting anything back, can ripple further than we'll ever see. Real change isn't loud. It doesn't trend. It lives in quiet choices, standing up when it's uncomfortable, helping someone without fanfare, owning our mistakes and doing better. It's in the courage to break from the crowd, the humility to listen, and the willingness to see humanity in those we're taught to ignore. No one is too small to make an impact, and no moment is too ordinary to matter. Thank you for watching and staying with us through this powerful story. We appreciate you. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button to support the channel and get more content that goes beyond the surface. We're building a community that values real stories, real change, and real impact, and your voice matters. Drop a comment below to let us know what you took away from this episode. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, your feedback helps shape what we create next. Until then, stay aware, stay kind, and stay tuned.